Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of the podcast. I am joined with an amazing guest, Mr. Sam. Sam has accumulated a vast amount of experience over 7 years of working in and around professional football. During his time playing non-league football in the UK, he has been invited to trial and played in some of Thailand's professional clubs and finishing his playing career in Thailand. His position naturally developed into coaching as an academy coach and then a video analyst. Currently, Sam is a CEO managing director for Euro Football Center, and we are pleased to be joined with him on today's episode of the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for the lovely introduction.
You're welcome. Sam, can you please introduce yourself and
Yeah, I am mixed Thai British. So I was born in Thailand. I moved to the UK when I was 3 years old. And I grew up there in the school system there. I had no idea that I would end up in Thailand and living in Thailand for so many years as an adult, but I think that's the way that football took me. Um, I've pretty much worked in football my whole adult life. So, or even before that, from 16 years old, I played full time at a football league club in the UK, and then before transitioning into Thailand and playing in the different leagues in Thailand, before stepping out into the coaching world. So yeah, that's in a short summary. That's pretty much my story.
can you take me through your journey in football? What inspired you to get into football? And you said you've been playing it for almost your life, basically, your whole life.
Yeah.
And how has your journey led you to where you are today?
Okay, good question. Actually, when I moved to the UK, I think originally I I never wanted to get into football as a young boy. But like UK has the best leagues in the world. They have the Premier League and they have, up to ten paid leagues, five of them being professional. And I think every a vast majority, like every young boy in England, is playing football at school in some capacity, whether it's in the playground or in school teams or whatever. There's so much football and investment in football going on in the UK and in Europe. So I think it's, to in the area that I lived was kind of unique. I lived in a in the suburbs where it's like predominantly white children, and to kind of fit in, you kind of needed to play them sports, and I kind of ended up being good at it actually. Like at school, we're always being the ones that picked first at lunchtime and stuff. So I think it kind of took that direction just based on the where I was living in the UK. I lived in the suburbs of Manchester, so obviously two massive football clubs and loads of smaller football clubs in around the area as well. So it's just like a massive community there for football. Um, I think it's pretty much shaped my life in quite a fantastic way. I'd say it's had its highs, it's had definitely had its lows, but I think it shaped me in a way where I've been able to travel the world. I've met amazing people. I've managed to earn a living from being in the sport, coaching and playing. So it's given me the opportunities to buy my own house, support my children. So yeah, I think that's pretty much how football shaped my life and my journey into football in the beginning.
That's actually quite interesting because you mentioned like the place where you grew up in England, like the suburbs of Manchester, like you
Yeah.
mentioned, playing football as a child. Is there any footballing people that you idolize and modeled your game after when you were young?
Yeah, for sure. He's not playing now, but Paul Scholes was Paul Scholes and Wayne Rooney was definitely the big ones for me. I grew up um, when Manchester United were in the peak of their dominance in UK football or in global football actually. So I remember watching Wayne Rooney's debut in the Champions League against Fenerbahce, and I must have been like 7 years old or 6 years old, and I watched that and I was just in absolute awe of how amazing it was and how fun it was to watch Wayne Rooney score a hat trick in his first game for Manchester United. Uh, and ever since that, I just thought, wow, like what an amazing thing to watch. I was just obsessed from then.
Also, going back to what you said earlier, that, there were some of the lows as well as the highs as well. But
Yeah,
focusing on the lows, my question to you is, as a footballer and you've been in the sport basically your whole life, like I mentioned, can you
yeah.
highlight some of the lows that you experienced and how you were able to move past those lows and, reach those high moments that you had in your career?
Sure. Okay. Like you see obviously Ronaldo and Messi and the Mbappes of the world, and they of all these flash cars and amazing lives. Um, they have like the dream life of every young boy doing the job of every young boy wants to do. But I think if you're not playing at the top level, it's definitely not as glamorous as you think. Uh, I signed my first contract to be full time at 16, and honestly, I thought at that point I was living the dream. Like honestly, I couldn't believe getting paid to play football, to train every day. That was completely new to me at that time, and I thought, wow, that's amazing. But when you get to 18 and the club want to reassess and see if they want to keep you on, and you have that meeting with the management, and unfortunately they don't want to keep you on, and then it kind of leaves you in that boat of like, oh well, what do I do now? Like this is all I've really ever done. So it was difficult for me at 18 years old. Like, do I continue playing football? Do I look for a job? And being from like a very working class family, obviously my parents were encouraging me to either go to university or get a job, and I found it very, very difficult at that time to hold down a job. I did try a lot of things, and it's just like you spend 2 months at this company and you spend a month doing that company, and it's like nothing really compares to football. It's so difficult to step out into the real world and be an adult at that age, especially if that's all you've ever done. And then I was very fortunate to get the opportunity to come to Thailand, but then again, it everything has its own challenges. You're not getting picked to play. You're just training and you're fighting hard to get in the team, and you're not playing so much. So you go down into clubs that are maybe not as big to get the opportunity, but then again you're faced with another issue of I'll be completely honest, my last contract was 10,000 baht a month, which is £250 a month, which is not a lot of money to survive on. My apartment itself was 5,000 baht a month, which left me with 5,000 left. I used to have to walk miles to training just because I didn't want to spend the money to get like taxis or whatever means of travels to get there. I had to walk. I had to scrape money together to get, yeah, food and buy very cheap stuff. Sometimes eating from 7-Eleven from days at a time. So them sort of problems are very, very difficult, and which a lot of people don't see when you're not playing in the top level as well. So, but I think again is to get past them sort of things, you need to have some real resilience about you. Like it wasn't easy as I thought many times. Oh, maybe I should stop. Maybe I should go back to the UK and try and get a normal job. And um, but it's just like you've just got to take it back day by day. You've got to be really, really tough mentally, and just believe that you're on the right path. You just believe that you're going to get to where you need to be.
Thank you for sharing that. Such, like you mentioned, there's all this like glamour, with the players who are playing at the top levels. But for someone like you to share that story to my audience, I really appreciate that. It's
Good. Yeah.
something that, not a lot of people talk about,
Yeah.
and it's great that you're very open about it. So, firstly, thank you so much for sharing that. And you said you take it day by day and you had to be like strong mentally. What
Yeah.
strategies do you implement to keep you mentally strong and focused when you are faced with challenges like that or in the area of football?
I think the thing that I said was that you need to have the belief in yourself of like you're gonna end up where you need to be. As horrible as like this path may feel for you right now, if you're in that place, is that you believe that eventually you'll get there. And if you're doing the right things consistently, so like you have to like almost look back at yourself and say, am I doing the things correctly? Am I sleeping well? Am I eating well? Am I exercising? Am I learning? Am I so if you try and pick up these habits and do them consistently, like although that period of time might not be great for you, just that believe that these things that you're doing for yourself will compound over time, and eventually you'll get to the destination or continue your journey into a better place.
You mentioned that you got like your first contract at the age of 16. You signed a
Yeah,
2-year contract
yeah,
and you played in international tournaments and
yeah,
FA Youth Cup tournaments as well.
yeah, yeah.
And for someone like you who's been around football your whole life, what was this experience like for you, and what did you learn as a player, and how have you grown in the different tournaments, would you say?
Particularly in the FA Youth Cup, I think that's a great system that they've got in the UK. It's obviously replicated on the FA Cup itself. So it's a nationwide tournament where all teams from the lowest levels to the top level play and compete each other as if it was the FA Cup. So even if you're in a smaller team, you might go and play teams like Manchester United in the FA Cup. You might get that opportunity to go and play in Old Trafford, and it's like that real first step into, oh, this is real football. Like this is my journey now into professional football. This is a playing in youth football. You're not really playing in the stadiums. You're not really playing in front of people. You're there for the purpose of development. But when you're playing the FA Youth Cup, you play in the actual stadiums. You in the dressing rooms. You do everything as a first team player would. So I think that in itself is a fantastic way for you to go and gain the experience, for you to make that step up, because that's not an easy jump to do, to go from academy football into senior football. It's a very, very difficult jump to make. So I think things like that and the experience you gain from it is absolutely amazing.
At such a young age, you were able to, get this contract that we talked about. But what do you think, in your opinion, looking back, were some of the contributing factors that led you to get this contract and get this opportunity to participate in like the tournaments that we mentioned?
Yeah. So um, that's a really good question. I never really, in hindsight, I never really looked back at it and thought to myself like, why was I ever in that position? But and it's it's the consistency of always looking for an opportunity. So you hear so many stories, but mine myself, I even if I went on trials at other professional clubs, and maybe a lot have said no to me before I earned that contract. A lot did say no to me, but it's just I knew that's what I wanted to do. I knew that I I I couldn't go into the normal route. All my friends were going to sixth form college, so that's years 12 and 13. A lot of them were looking to go into university after, And I just knew in myself like that's not what I wanted to do. I didn't want to do a 9 to 5. I didn't, you'd ask my friends and some would say, I want to be a lawyer. I want to be an accountant or something that never appealed to me. So I think I just had that drive from such a young age. It's like I had to make this work. So I went on trials, so many trials, with so many rejections before a club would go and say, yes, I think you're the right person for the contract. I think that partially is a little bit of luck, but I also believe that maybe growing up in the UK more so than most places in the world as well. I think you grow up with such a great foundation of what football's about and how to play football and the different systems that they have. Whereas in the UK, the FA is split up into different districts and different zones, so it's all the funding is distributed so evenly. There's so much funding in UK football. There's so many things that you can be doing, and it's so cheap. It's almost like, and a lot of it you can even go to play for free. So I think the foundation was there, and then with the combination of uh, knowing that this is what I wanted to and didn't want to give up, um, probably led me to signing my contract at 16.
You mentioned that you said like, okay, you have to make this work, and you did make it work. But part of being a coach or a player is to deal with that pressure and that uncertainty, knowing that, you're going to all these trials, but you never know which one will actually take you. So, in your opinion, how do you deal with pressure in terms of pressure as being a player, but also the pressure as in your position, being a managing director, being a coach, which you have a lot of experience with? How do you say the pressure is different between those two?
Um, that's a really good point. Uh, the first of all, I don't think pressure is a bad thing. Um, I think pressure is probably a good thing as long as it depends on how you view pressure. I think if you view pressure in the form of like this is growth, I can get through this, and you use it to almost like kind of fuel um, your work ethic and your drive and doing your good habits. I think that's the first and foremost thing that you've got to do to deal with it. The differences are different. It is like as a football player, like from academy football in comparison to first team football, it's very much development based. It's how can I develop my understanding of the game? How can I play better in different systems? How can I be a better player? And then you transition into first team football, and then the pressures like we need results. And if you're not performing, then the coach is either not going to play you or look at you and blame you. So you might not earn another contract. So that pressure is very different. Like it's very, very results driven. Um, so that's a lot of weight to carry. But then when you transition into like working life and being a managing director, I think then it's completely different again. So your pressure then is I need to be able to make this work because I have 6 or 7 coaches that work for me full time. I need to get their salaries paid. I need to make sure they're happy. I need to make sure this works because I'm still paying off a house. I have to support my partner, to support my children. So that them pressures are completely different again. So it's like um, I'd even say it's probably a bigger weight than I ever felt playing football as well.
I think that's a great point that you mentioned because, as a managing director and as a player, you both have pressure, but the type of pressure and the feeling of pressure changes. But
Yeah.
the journey into becoming a better football player or someone who excelled at football like you, can you share some of the sacrifices you had to make to reach that level of football? and you said you had to make it work because you knew you didn't want to go the standard route of going to sixth form or working the 9 to 5
Yeah.
job. So how would you say what were some of the sacrifices that you had to make to reach that level?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So, in if I look back at it in a timeline, I'd say at 16 years old, all of your friends, so all of my friends from school went down the route of furthering their education. I had one friend that played football with me, and who went on this journey with me. So it's almost a sense of like I have a twin brother as well, so he'd get invited to all these parties and especially at that age, 16 and 17, you're very much like girls are very much of a big distraction. So you almost have to put that to one side and say, what do I really want to achieve here? I've got a game tomorrow. I might be playing in the FA Cup. I might be playing in the league tomorrow, or I know that the first team coach is coming to watch me. I can't go to them sort of parties. I missed out on a lot of parties, um, which is in hindsight, it's probably not a bad thing. But as a 16, 17-year-old, it's very, very lonely life. Um, and then obviously when I traveled to Thailand, it was almost like in a moment's notice. I played against a game in England against Birmingham City. I don't know if they're League One or Championship now, but Birmingham I played a game against Birmingham City, and I got an offer from Thailand pretty much soon after, saying um, offering this opportunity to go and play in the Thai league, and I had to be there next week. So I remember just saying to my dad, like, "Hey, I've got to go," like, and I just left everything behind to go to Thailand. And again, it's a very, very lonely life. I had no friends in Thailand at that point. I very much hated it. I was very much introverted. I didn't want to go do anything, didn't want to explore, couldn't really speak the language. So again, it's like the sacrifices of leaving your home and comfort behind. I remember there were days where when I after that when I didn't have a club, I'd travel all the way up and down the country, all the way up to the south of Thailand to Ranong, which is like a 16-hour bus ride. With next to no money. I had no data on my phone to call anyone or speak to anyone. So it's very much a lonely life. Whereas you look at Instagram now, it's like the world's all on social media. You see everyone, they're all partying and they're having a good life and they're at university and they're in these great jobs and whatnot. And I'm traveling up and down Thailand on my own with 500 baht in my pocket. And I've just threw away any version of me that wanted to be comfortable or being around my family. So there's months and years at a time where I just spend away on my own. So I think that's probably the biggest sacrifices that I've made.
Would you say that was the most challenging experience that you felt in your life? And how did you say you kept a positive attitude to kind of like not really internalize what social media was saying, but to also keep a good attitude to not switch career paths?
Yes, I would say that was probably the hardest part in my football career. And believe me, I really there was so many moments where I just wanted to come home. Um, there were times when I did get Wi-Fi or whatever and make phone calls home and say like, listen, I want to come home now. Um, I that was really, really hard. I at that point when I first come out to Thailand, I remember I had a girlfriend back in the UK and I called her on my first week here and I just started crying. I was just like, wow, this is too hard for me and I want to come home. But obviously, like I think the words of encouragement from people back in the UK was just like, no, just stick it out, just see how it happens. I think you just got to stick with it.
So what did that situation teach you, and Are you looking back, are you happy that you decided to stick it out, or do you think that you would have done something differently in hindsight?
I'm very much happy with how it worked out. I'm happy I stuck to it because if ever there was a day I was in that position again or in a similar position, I know I can do it. Um, if there was ever a day where my salary is like 10K a month, as it was back then, I know I can do it. Or if I had to face the challenges of like leaving home and going away and being away from people for long periods of time, I can do it. I know it. Like it kind of gives you that confidence in yourself as like I can probably do it gives you that validation of like I can just get through anything. So yeah, I'm glad that that's happened and I'm glad that's happened in the way it did so I could be here where I am today.
But there was never like a decision to change to maybe a different sport or go back to university. There was never that indication of like switching career paths, right? It was always just, I need to tough it out.
There was a point where I went back to England for just under a year. I stopped playing. This was just before COVID, actually. I stopped playing and I went back to the UK. And I thought to myself, mate, I ended up being a chef somehow for a short period of time. At that point, I was kind of like over football. I was done. Didn't want to know anything about football. But then, you go back into that normal, I say normal job, that different career path or a more normalized job that people would do. And then I think you quickly realize, oh, actually, yeah, this isn't for me. And then from that point, it's like I've got to do everything that it takes to come back out here. And it kind of like I probably needed that low point to kind of like kick me up the backside and go, all right, you've got to go back and do this again.
So take me through a little bit about how the chef part came about, because was the chef after you came to Thailand and then you went back to the UK?
Yes, yes. Um, so I was playing in Thailand still, and it was coming to the end of the season. Um, I'd I'd been doing maybe long distance with my ex-partner for over a year now. Um, and we had a lot of discussions with because I did have contracts offers waiting for me to be signed still in Thailand for the following season. I had various offers to go continue playing. We had a sit down and we had a chat and decided that in order for me and her to continue being together, that either I have to come back to the UK because she was still very much in university. She was in her second year of university, or and looking to graduate the following year, or we kind of call it a day and I stay out here. So at that point, as a young man, you're kind of weighing up the options. Do I want to play in in Thailand, earning not very much money for playing football and not really having too many highs at that time? Or do I want to try and make this work in England? I think that was probably a regret of mine to step away and go back to the UK. I'll be honest with you, because then uh, it's very much difficult to get back into the football scene in the UK once you've left. I've been playing in Asia for a couple of years prior to that, so um, I just kind of fell out of the game. I fell out of love with the game as well. And it was kind of what could I do? And I just picked the first thing that I could do that was going, and I just went into being a chef.
So you mentioned in the discussion that you left everything that you had in the UK and you came to Thailand. And I mentioned that, you played in some of the professional clubs in the introduction when I introduced you. How did this
Yeah.
come about, and what was that experience like?
Um, Initially, I was on the I believe I was on the radar in Thailand. So when I left the club I was playing for, Berry Football Club, we was in League One at the time. The discussion, obviously, with the managing directors at the club was not how I wanted it to be. I was told that I wasn't going to be kept on at the club, and it was kind of a weird limbo situation where I didn't know what to do with myself. So, my parents, obviously being working class, encouraged me to think about university or applying for jobs. And I think I applied for every job that you can think of, being a waiter and a chef and working in shops and call centers. I applied for everything, went to so many interviews and just never really having the heart in them interviews to kind of like try and sell myself. I was kind of like, I don't care if they give me a job or not. I don't really want to do this. And then it was kind of like really random that an English coach in the U in sorry in Thailand called me. I think he got my number through an agent that was working in the UK at the time, and he called me and he just kind of said, "Hey, can you be in Thailand next week? We want to have a look at you. We want to sign you." And I almost thought it was a prank at first, but then I spoke to my dad. I said, "This is the club that want me there next week," and it wasn't even a week. It was like 3 days later. I was on a plane to Bangkok on my own. I've never flown on my own in my life at that point. So yeah, that was kind of a crazy turnaround within like 3 days.
What was going through your mind when you decided to leave everything and come here, knowing that maybe you don't know exactly where this could lead in the future potentially, or if you would stay in Thailand or would you have to go back to the UK? Like, what was going through your mind at that time?
I think I probably felt every emotion that you could feel in them 3 days, 4 days to we're getting to Thailand. I was nervous. I knew nothing about Thai football. I'd never watched the Thai national team play. I couldn't name you any teams. I couldn't name you any players. I knew nothing about it. I tried to do a little bit of research, like on YouTube, watching what it was like. I didn't know what the teammates would be like. I didn't know. I remember calling my cousin constantly for 3 days, just like every other hour, is like asking questions because he watched football in Thailand. He's obviously in Thailand. So I was calling him all the time. Can you come get me at the airport? I don't know where to go. I don't know which area this. I didn't know Bangkok. Uh, so I think that more so I was really nervous and scared because I didn't know what was going to happen. But then part of me was kind of like excited. I was like, yeah, I this is an opportunity for me now to step into first team football and be make a name for myself as a first team player.
So we've talked about a lot of things like your experience and your journey, but where, when and where would you say you got your biggest breakthrough, and what do you think ignited the spark?
Hmm. I think it would have been my first season as a full time football player. So at same at 16 years old, I was playing for a League One football club, Berry Football Club. Um, but even so, like that season alone was amazing. Um, I played in front of the first team coach more so than a lot of players in my age group. I invited to train with the first team on several occasions. Uh, we played against Manchester United in the Manchester Senior Cup. Play against some of my heroes, Darren Fletcher, Federico Makeda. I think Dean Henderson was in goal. I think he's still playing. Um, so that season alone was pretty much like the highlight of me, where of my football playing career anyway. Um, that's when I knew as well, especially when you get your first salary as well as football players. Like, it wasn't a lot of money, but it's like, yo, I can get paid to do this. This is a job. Like this is cool. Like I remember getting that money for the first time and spending it all my money on shoes. But even so, like that was like an incredible feeling. That season alone was amazing.
We talked a lot about like you as a player, but focusing on like what you do in present day and more
Yeah.
of the recent experiences that you have as a football coach.
Hmm.
We mentioned like in the UK that a lot of people like played football at some degree, and football is just a worldwide global sport. And
Yeah.
as you are a football coach, how do you coach players with different skill levels while keeping their passion for football alive?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think in you it's very dependent on the age group that you're coaching. So like an emphasis that I would put on is it has to be fun. Like, as a football player, like the last thing you want to be doing is your coach saying, guys, let's go do a 5K run, because that's boring, like you have to enjoy having the football at your feet, especially at a younger age. Enjoy being on the football pitch, enjoy scoring goals, enjoy like making your friends look silly by doing skills past them and stuff, being competitive. So that's the main thing, especially at a younger age. Something that I've been maybe focusing more so now, because you definitely go through like phases in as a coach where you might have like a phase of this 3 months has been really enjoyable. I've been learning a lot. I've been putting a lot of stuff into practice, and you might go through a plateau of a few weeks where I don't want to coach. I don't want to do this. The kids are behaving badly and stuff. So I think setting expectations of the kids as well is so important. So managing their behavior. Uh, you as a coach, just as much as the children, have to enjoy that football session. If it's not enjoyable for me, if I'm constantly reminding children to behave in the correct manner or conduct themselves in the correct way, then it's not fun for me. And then obviously I'm in that mindset of like, I don't like this. I'm not enjoying this. Let's just get out of jail and play matches, and it's not as fun. Or let's just go and do some runs. It's not as fun. So I think all around everyone's got to enjoy it, but enjoy it being competitive, I guess.
So we are reaching the end of the interview section of the podcast, but I would like to
Mhm.
ask you one final question, which is
Sure.
if you could voice one unique message to the world, what would it be?
This is a good one. Can I give you two? Okay. All right. I think it's something that I've been saying to you, and something that I say a lot to my younger coaches, which more in particular are young men, is that I don't believe in the typical work-life balance. And that means when a lot of people might do the job and or do the studies, and then they go play Instagram and stuff for 2 3 hours a day, and then go play on the PlayStation for 2 3 hours a day after. It's like I don't believe in that. I believe in phases of your life. So I think my unique message is work as hard as you can. So you might work as hard as you can for 5 years or 10 years, and then balance it out with a really relaxed couple of years. So that's the first thing, work as hard as you can. Um, my second unique message is just believe that you'll get to where you need to be, no matter how difficult it is, how how hard you might feel, and how much you want to give up. Just believe that you're going to get to where you need to be.
right, Sam, thank you so much for the unique messages and your time for today's
You're
episode
welcome.
of the
Thank you
podcast.
for having me on.
I'm sure that my audience definitely enjoyed.
Yeah,
And for my audience who is new, if you haven't already done so, please make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video if you did find it interesting. And stay tuned for the next episode. Goodbye.
thank you.